I'm Sean Cooper, president and owner of Fit Financial Consulting LLC. Last week I talked extensively about how to choose a financial advisor, and next week I'm going to be talking about the rather painful subject of budgeting. But this week I really want to shift gears and talk about some misconceptions about the idea of cardio or aerobic exercise versus weightlifting. So there's some misconceptions out there, and that's what I'm shooting to address today. And I think the common one and what you're all thinking of is the idea of cardio for weight loss and lifting for bulking up. So jumping into that, certainly cardiovascular routines or aerobic exercise is well known for burning calories while you're doing the exercise. In fact, I think it's probably far superior in that regard versus most lifting routines. And in general, for weight loss, you're kind of shooting for a calorie deficit on a daily basis. And I don't necessarily think it's that simple, but that's the gist of it. And since running or cardio does burn more calories during the exercise, that tends to be what people lean towards. However, you also have to consider your calorie burn after the exercise. And what they found is, on average, an aerobic exercise results in increased calorie burns for approximately 14 hours due to EPIC, or the excessive post-oxygen consumption, which is how they measure the additional caloric burn over that time frame. And that does vary quite a bit based on the routine and the person, but 14 hours is a general rule of thumb. Weightlifting, on the other hand, although it doesn't typically burn as many calories during the routine itself, can actually result in increased calorie burns for 24 to 48 hours. And that's due to the fact that when you lift weights, you're actually breaking down the muscle fiber to a certain degree, and then your body is having to rebuild it over time. And that increased energy consumption to rebuild the muscle is what drives that additional caloric burn over time. On top of that, muscle mass actually equates to approximately 30% of your metabolism. And that doesn't work for all mass on the body. Fat mass, for example, burns significantly fewer calories than muscle mass. So just having more bulk, more muscle bulk, that is, increases your calorie burn. So my point isn't to forgo your cardio routine by any means, but just don't forget weight training in your quest for weight loss. Conversely, lifting weights exclusively isn't a good methodology either. In fact, I think it's something of a recipe for disaster. For myself personally, if all I do is lift weights, my blood pressure tends to get a little wacky. So I force myself to do cardio, and although I prefer weightlifting, in fact, I tend to require some kind of distraction when doing cardio, my preference being soccer if I can have the opportunity. I certainly have to work it in. And fortunately for me, that's all it really takes to keep my blood pressure in line, is building in a little bit of cardio 2 or 3 times a week, which isn't all that bad. But even if you don't have some kind of issue you have to deal with by adding cardio in, there's a number of other benefits that you can derive from your weightlifting routine, or in your weightlifting routine, from doing cardio, and that being the efficiency in your weightlifting routine itself. You're not huffing and puffing in between your lifts. You can get back to the lifts more readily and maybe even do additional lifts. And then also the effectiveness of your cardiovascular system in getting oxygen and nutrients to the muscles as they're trying to repair themselves and recover from your prior routines. So, and throughout all of this, like I said, I sometimes get a rebuttal from people, and those looking to lose weight and who have been doing cardio, saying, well, I don't want to get too bulky. And I don't think that's necessarily an issue, as long as you focus on utilizing weightlifting as a supplement to your cardio routine. Avoid lifting techniques that are designed for bulking up, like time under tension, which I'll talk about later, and keep your protein intake to around 0.5 gram of protein per pound of desired body weight. I think you'll find that you may generate some toning, which is probably what you're shooting for anyway, but you won't necessarily bulk up in the negative way that you are envisioning. And what I'm mean in terms of the lifting portion, really kind of focusing on a very high rep, low weight scheme, or a very low rep, high weight scheme, and not that time under tension that I alluded to earlier. So overall, though, the key to most people's weight loss is not necessarily the workout routine. As long as you're doing the work, it's going to help, and certainly it's a big factor. But the bigger aspect of it is probably your diet and what you're eating, choosing to eat. So, and different body types and different people respond differently to different diets. So that's why there are so many out there. But for me, at least, the best method for cutting weight, or at least cutting fat, is just to reduce my carb intake. So again, it varies person to person, but that's the gist of the ketone diet or the Atkins diet, is just to cut carbs. And the part of why I like those methods is not only does it work for a large audience, but it doesn't require cutting calories necessarily, but just cutting the carbohydrates. So you're wanting to focus on lean protein, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates when you have them. So vegetables, especially dark green vegetables, and then adding in certain fruits, and really limiting your simple carbs like sugars, breads, and pastas. So, but that's just one example. Each person is going to be different in that regard. Similarly, you have people that are trying to bulk up and they're avoiding cardio because they're afraid it will cause them to lose weight. And again, I don't think that's going to be detrimental to your goals. It's more about your diet and how you actually lift. So with regard to the diet, they kind of have an opposite goal there. They're probably actually going to want to increase their carbohydrate intake as well as their protein intake, probably shooting for around 1 gram of carb per pound of body weight. Some of the really competitive lifters, bodybuilders, things of that nature, might go up to 2 grams of carbs 2 grams of protein or even more. Personally, I tend to shy away from that for the very simple reason that too much protein can be hard on your kidneys, and that's something you want to be very cognizant of. The other aspect, though, is how you lift. And one of the methods for bulking up is that time under tension, or TUT. And what you're shooting for there is keeping your muscles contracted for an extended period of time. You will probably even be shooting for failure or fatigue on a more regular basis in your lifting routines. One of my favorite methodologies for that is utilizing a standard lift, but then doing a full 5-second count as you let the weight back down. So if you're curling something, you lift it up in a normal fashion, but then count to 5 on the way back down. The same can be utilized for a squat. Stand up, but then count to 5 on your way back down. It applies to any other lift that you want to do. The idea is you're causing your muscles to contract for that extended period of time, and you're driving them to fatigue or even failure much faster. Again, this does have its own risks, though. Specifically, you're risking rhabdomyolysis, or rhabdo, and that is a very serious thing. It is the excessive breakdown of damaged skeletal muscle, and it can cause a variety of different symptoms, from muscle weakness, low urine output, fatigue, soreness, bruising, dark tea-colored urine, infrequent urination, fever, feeling sick, nausea, vomiting, confusion, and agitation. And guess what? All of these, or at least most of them, are related to kidney damage. So again, we want to avoid that at all costs. So it's not something you want to risk. You don't want to drive your muscles to fatigue too frequently or too severely. And really what I'm driving at here is the idea of combining these two workout routines, whether it's doing one on one day and another on the next day to offset one another and mix them in together, or actually doing them on the same day. One of the easiest methodologies for that is supersets, where you combine two different lifts that work different muscles, and doing it without any break in between. And the idea there is you keep your heart rate elevated by not taking a break, but you still give the muscles a time to recover while you're doing the other lift. So you might combine things that work your biceps and your triceps, or your chest and your back, or your legs and your upper body, and superset those to offset one another. I actually have a routine that I'll share in another video, one of my favorites, and by favorite I mean dreaded routine of mine, but it is a good one, but I will share that in another video later. The idea though is just to utilize these lifting methodologies in tandem, not using them exclusively, not being afraid to mix them together. If you've been doing one for an extended period of time, I think you'll find that adding the other in is not going to be detrimental to your goals, but may actually help you break through some plateaus that you might have been fighting with. So it can be very beneficial to mix them together. I'd love to hear your guys' ideas, different concepts for blending these workout methodologies. So if you like to share those, share them here, or give me a call, shoot me an email with questions. My number is 720-808-6979, and my email is sean.cooper@fitfinancialconsulting.com. Happy training, guys.